Hey up all, I'm Propagandist and you're watching some more GuP content here on my channel as promised in some of my previous Girls and Panzer related videos. So, if it isn't clear already, I am a big fan of the Girls and Panzer anime franchise, which first aired as a TV anime actually back in 2012 over in Japan, but which has since gone on to include all kinds of installments in its franchise. So there's been various sort of TV OVAs, we've had various mangas, we had their film in 2015, and we had also the Alice War OVA, which is meant to accompany the film, which obviously I haven't seen yet. But of course, most recently, there's been a new, well, at least there's been news of a new instalment in the Girls and Panzer franchise, the first part of which has technically already aired in Japan, as of the time I record this, and that, of course, is called Girls and Panzer Das Finale. Now, I've mentioned this in a couple of previous videos, but of course, you know, I'm going to be doing content on it here, at least on what we know of it, based on the first part. So, this should be very interesting. Now, thing is, I don't know when the next parts in this franchise are going to be aired. All I know is that the first part has been aired already, so a lot of the information you're going to see and hear here is just based on that one episode that's so far been released. But needless to say, I'll be keeping my eyes peeled in due course, and of course if you know, another part comes out in the meantime and more information becomes available, then I'll definitely be doing more Das Finale related content. But of course, as I said, as promised in some of my previous Girls and Panzer videos, I'm going to be taking a look at what we know about Das Finale so far here on my channel. Now, originally I actually recorded one kind of great big video for this, which was just talking about everything that we know so far about this instalment. However, the only issue is that that proved to be quite a long video, and not long after I'd actually recorded it, more information actually became available that technically contradicted some of the earlier information I'd seen and which I talked about. So I've had to delete that original footage and go back to the drawing board with it. So basically what I'm going to do is, instead of just trying to do one kind of great big video on Das Finale that covers everything we know, instead I'm going to split this down. I'm going to make at least in the meantime 3 sort of shorter videos, each one covering a particular topic concerning a certain aspect of Das Finale. So what you're seeing here right now is going to be the first of, hopefully, as I say, about 3 sort of initial videos on Das Finale, each one covering a particular aspect or topic. And for this one, for this particular video, what I'm going to focus on is what we know in terms of plot and storyline of Das Finale. So in future videos, I'm also going to be covering other particularly notable aspects of this new instalment. So I'll be covering things like characters, I'll be covering things like tanks, etc, etc. And of course, you know, as I say, I'm going to aim for about 3 videos initially, but of course if more information starts to become available, then of course I may do more content. So keep your eyes peeled. So, by way, of course, of a couple of usual notices before I get into things, firstly, as always, I'm on the sort of left side of the screen, so that way I have the whole right side, which I can use to overlay static imagery and things like that. That's pretty, you know, standard for all of my GuP content that I've been doing so far. Secondly, like all my other Girls and Panzer videos, as I just said a moment ago, it will consist of static imagery. There will be no actual in-anime footage, just for copyright reasons, because of course if you've been following Propagandist for a while, you'll know that my original Anzio OVA review video technically got blocked for copyright reasons, so I had to re-upload it with static imagery instead. So no actual footage, but hopefully static imagery will be fine for you all there. Thirdly, of course, I will be glancing away from my camera quite frequently just to look towards my screen, because of course I have a 4-page Word document open here that has all of my notes in it. So there's plenty of stuff that I want to talk about and I don't want to forget anything, hence why I have this sort of kind of rough script on the screen, so I'll be constantly kind of consulting that just to make sure I'm not missing anything out. And fourthly, this video will contain some spoilers, so if you're hoping to watch Das Finale's first part for yourself at some point and you don't want anything ruined, then I definitely recommend that you navigate away from this video right now. So you've been warned, everybody. In fact, actually, now that I kind of think about it, I don't think Das Finale has at all been licensed yet for release in the West, so probably the only places actually you could find Das Finale's first part here on the internet are probably from sites of dubious legal status. So yes, I imagine, you know, if you are hoping not to be spoiled or ruined, or have the storyline ruined or anything like that, then yeah, you are going to be waiting a while before Death Finale comes to Western screens, most likely. But of course, with that little aside sort of out of the way, let's actually get into things. So, what do we know about Girls and Panzer Death Finale in terms of what sort of media it is, in terms of what kind of plot it's going to be following, what the storyline's going to be, etc, etc. Is it a new TV series, is it an OVA, or is it a completely new film? Something like that. Well, to start us off here, in terms of what kind of media it is, in short, Death Finale is, according to various sources, going to consist of a series of 6 short films. Now, first of those, of course, has already been aired, as I've been constantly repeating so far in this video. It's been aired over in Japan on Japanese cinema screens, so the Japanese audience have had the luxury of seeing it. Of course, as I say, we over here in the West, in the UK, in the US, you know, we might not be seeing it for a very long time yet. But apparently the first part the first of these 6 sort of short films is apparently about 40 minutes long, roughly, give or take a little bit either way. So it's nowhere near the length of 2015's Girls and Panzer Dead film, but it is approximately twice the length of a usual Japanese TV episode. So in that respect, I'd say it's more kind of comparable to the length of the Anzio OVA in terms of its duration. But what do we actually know about Death Finale in terms of its plot? The thing is, more and more information has become available in this regard. I should stress here that most of what I've got on my screen is based upon information that's been revealed by the airing of that first episode of Death Finale over in Japan, as well as various information that I've cobbled together from the Girls and Panzer wiki, from Crunchyroll news articles. But having read all of this over, all of it does give me a bit more kind of in the way of clues about how this instalment is going to progress overall. So let's start for a moment by looking at the name of this instalment in the franchise. Death Finale, or the final chapter, whatever you want to call it. That's quite a striking title, in my opinion, and you could interpret that in a couple of ways, I think. So the first interpretation, the first way you could look at that title, is that this could be the final instalment in the Girls and Panzer franchise. Now, as I say, that's just one possible interpretation. I personally am not really so much gravitating towards this one, but if you kind of follow this one, the thing is, if you look at the overall story arc of Girls and Panzer, at least so far, it's been very much about the girls of Ori Academy fighting to keep their school open, to prevent it from being closed. But the thing is, at the end of Dead Film, the movie pretty much confirmed that their school wasn't going to be closed. Thing is, Anzu managed to get the Ministry of Education's agreement in writing to keep the school open if ORI won the match against the University League team, and of course they did win. So obviously now, presumably, the Ministry has to pretty much honour its written agreement. So, as I say, Dead Film pretty much confirmed that the ORI school is pretty much safe as far as we're aware. So I am wondering if, you know, Death Finale will really perhaps attempt to go for, you know, a continuation of that particular story arc of trying to save the school. So the big question, of course, for the producers of Girls and Panzer in light of that might well have been, where do we actually kind of go from here with the franchise? So in that case, Death Finale might be intended to kind of wrap everything up, especially now that that kind of primary story arc has pretty much been taken to its full sort of logical extent. I mean, they could, I suppose, try going for, you know, a continuation of the story arc of the ORI girls having to fight to keep their school from being closed. But having said that, you know, after the TV series and their film, where that was very much the major plot point, I do feel like that would be a bit played out, perhaps. So it would be better if they were going to, you know, go for something interesting to adopt a complete new story arc. So in that, you know, sense, then maybe Death Finale is a hint at the possibility that Girls and Panzer as a franchise is kind of winding down to a close now. If so, you know, that would make things kind of sad. After all, Girls and Panzer has been one of my favourite animes that I've seen. Granted, I haven't watched a lot of anime, but, you know, Girls and Panzer will occupy a sort of special place, really, just because of how sort of adorably action-packed it actually is. But at the same time, it would kind of make sense in a way for the producers to try to end Girls and Panzer on a high note rather than attempt to string it out. Thing is, Girls and Panzer has been very popular over in Japan, and certainly among the limited fan base it has outside of Japan. But the thing is, the big question always is for producers, how long will that popularity last before eventually people sort of outgrow it and start to move on to new franchises? So that's, one interpretation of the title. Like I say, I personally haven't really gravitated towards this one. I've more gravitated towards my second interpretation, which I'm about to outline in quite some depth over the course of this video. So the second interpretation, the one that I personally go for, is that alternatively, maybe this isn't the end of the Girls and Panzer franchise. The thing is, in light of some of the information that is available about Death's Finale, particularly coming out of the first part of it, there is reason to believe that this is not the end of Girls and Panzer, and that what this, this title could actually be, this title Death's Finale or the final chapter, whatever you want to call it, this title could actually be something of a cunning ploy, to put it that way. This isn't maybe actually the end of the franchise, but it could actually be the beginning of something new. Just getting a bit of gas from my tea there. Got my teacup right here, so, something nice to drink, just to prevent my throat from drying up. But, of course, as I'm saying here, maybe this isn't the end of the franchise as a whole, but maybe this is the beginning of something new, and that the title is, as I say, perhaps a cunning ploy. Now, as I talk about some of the plot details here over the course of this video, the things that we know about, about Death's Finale Part 1, you should hopefully be able to see why I gravitate particularly towards this particular interpretation of the title, and why I think this is a particularly valid interpretation of things. Now, of course, I haven't had a chance to actually properly watch the first part of Death's Finale, because, as I've said, it's only just been released on Japanese cinema screens pretty much, so in terms of when it's going to be licensed for release over here in the West, in the UK, the US, North America, in Europe, obviously I don't think a date has been established for that, so it all really depends on negotiations between Bandai and film companies like Sentai Filmworks, things like that. So, like I say, I haven't been able to see the first part of Death's Finale even, and it's likely that I won't do so for quite some time. But of course, I do have a very basic understanding of some of the important plot points based on the Girls and Panzer wiki. So a couple of details, of course, I have kind of spoiled for myself just for the sake of this video. But I haven't spoiled any of the main stuff in terms of the actual action, the combat, the tank combat, the kind of things which really I think most people are probably watching Girls and Panzer for. So I have enough here to make a video which outlines some general points, but not so much that I would end up absolutely spoiling myself massively. So one of the first things to actually note about Death's Finale is the temporal setting, i.e. when it's taking place. So this instalment, based on things we've seen in trailers, from pictures and screenshots, is taking place in winter. There's one main reason why we know this. It's because in some of the various trailers, in some of the various promotional material for Death's Finale, you can clearly see that some of the ORI girls are shown wearing slightly different uniforms to what we've seen in the TV series and in their film. So from what I understand, this is supposed to be ORI Girls Academy's winter uniform. So the thing is, if my limited knowledge of the Japanese education system is serving me correctly, then schools typically have sort of two uniforms, particularly high schools, I think. So they have a summer uniform and they have a winter uniform, which of course, fairly self-explanatory. They're meant to be worn during different seasons. So the suggestion that we take from this is that Death's Finale is either entirely or at least partially taking place during the winter semester. And I must say, actually, I do rather like the design of those outfits, it must be said. But, of course, what else do we actually know apart from that? Well, one of the key things to actually note is that a certain character in Girls and Panzer is apparently going to be fairly important, I think, to Death's Finale's plot. And that character who I'm referring to here is Momo Kawashima, who is the ORI Student Council's PR girl, PR manager, whatever her role is technically supposed to be called. So Kawashima, along with her two student council buddies, Anzu, the president, and Yuzu, the vice president, is actually supposed to be a third-year student, as far as I'm aware, meaning that all three of these characters are in their sort of final year of high school. And if, of course, my knowledge of Japanese education and the education system is again serving me correctly, each high school academic year begins in April and ends in March. So my assumption is that the original Girls and Panzer TV series, in which we were first introduced to Miho Nishizumi and to all the characters, my kind of assumption is that that was set round about April time when it started, especially considering that Miho had just transferred to Ourai after spending, I'm guessing, her first year of high school at Kuro Morimine. So if that's the case, then, you know, by now the academic year must be getting on in Girls and Panzer. So, furthermore, by this sort of stage of their high school lives, the student council girls are going to be sort of looking ahead, thinking about what they're going to be doing after they graduate from high school. And from what I understand, a key plot point in Death's finale is going to be about Kawashima failing her entrance exams to university, or something along those lines. And that's apparently going to be sort of an important plot point, in the sense that the Ourai girls are all going to have to rally around her in order to help her out. So, like I say, I've tried to avoid reading too much so that I don't excessively spoil myself here, but the story goes, as far as I'm aware, that the Ourai girls realise there may be a way out of this for Kawashima. She can use her Senshido experience to take something like a specialised entrance exam for a particular university, something along those lines, I think. I don't know the exact details, but it's something like that. But in order for her to actually qualify for that entrance exam, she has to be able to demonstrate her skills in the field of Senshido by winning an actual tournament, which of course is a bit of a tall order, because if you've watched the TV series, and all other GuP installments, you know that of course Momo Kawashima is hardly the best Senshido player in Ourai's ranks. She's hardly the best team member. But of course the other girls rally around her, appointing her as the commander, apparently, for this instalment, with Miho actually taking the sub-commander role rather than the overall commander role, as she has done in Dead Film and in the TV series. So to help Kawashima kind of prove herself, Ourai decides to enter a new tournament, which, if I'm not mistaken, is called the Winter Continuous Track Cup, which is assuming that the English translations are correct. So if Ourai can win this, they can give Kawashima the credit as commander for the victory, and thus help her pass the aforementioned entrance exam. So with all that in mind, my guess is that Death's finale is going to be its own kind of story arc here. I suppose a big challenge for the producers of Girls and Panzer was one sort of surrounding the idea of tension and suspense. What I mean is, in the TV series and in their film, the stakes for Ourai were always very high. If they didn't win, their school was going to be shut down. And of course that would mean the end of all their friendships, all the relationships that they built up with each other, all their teamwork, all their camaraderie, etc, etc. So, in light of that, we, the audience, had a reason to be sort of emotionally invested in their struggle. But of course, with the school saved at the end of Dead Film, that actually raises a bit of a conundrum, because it means that that source of tension, that source of emotional investment on the audience's part, is no longer there. So of course the question for the producers of Girls and Panzer now is, okay, well, how do we kind of, keep the tension? How do we get the audience sort of reinvested in the franchise? So, in other words, they now have to find a new source for tension, for emotional investment. So what it looks like they've actually gone for this time is not a story about the girls having to save their school, but about the girls having to fight for a friend's future. So that's an interesting, little approach here, and that represents potentially the start of a new story arc, something different to what we've seen before. So this perhaps gives you an indication of why I was gravitating towards the second of my two interpretations of the title of the franchise. So, this, calling it Death's finale or the final chapter, is a cunning ploy, and it might represent the start of a new sort of plot arc rather than the end of something else. But why title it the finale? What's the actual kind of meaning behind that particular choice of words? So, going back to what I was saying before about Kawashima, she's approaching the end of her high school days, as are Anzu and Yuzu, but it's not just them, in fact. From what I understand, there are quite a few characters from the various schools that we've seen in the franchise who are technically in their third year and who will be graduating. So, for example, I think St. Gloriana's Darjeeling, for one, apparently is also going to be graduating, and so too is Kuro Morimine's Maho Nishizumi, Miho's elder sister. She's also of an age where she's going to be graduating high school. So in a manner of speaking, what I've interpreted the title to mean is that this isn't necessarily an indication that the Girls and Panzer franchise as a whole is actually coming to a final conclusion. Instead, what it could be referring to is the fact that more than a few of the characters, Kawashima included, are in the final chapter, quote-unquote, of their high school lives. So for them, for those characters particularly, this is the finale. So whether this means they'll be taking much more of a backseat, if they're going to be featured at all in any potential future instalments of Girls and Panzer, I'm actually not sure. I mean, that does kind of remain to be seen there, but, you know, that's just a thought. So, just as a kind of aside very quickly here, another notable, albeit possibly quite minor, plot point for Death's Finale is that Anglerfish team are actually going to be taking on student council roles, since of course Anzu, Yuzu and Momo are technically going to be leaving Ourai. So it'll be interesting to see if that has any effect on the storyline. I mean, from what I've seen, Hana, I think, is going to be the student council president after Anzu. I've seen a picture of her, which I'll probably put on the screen about now, where she stood behind the student council desk in their office. I think also Yukari and Sari are also going to be joining her, so I can't remember exactly what positions they're going to be occupying, who's going to be the vice president, who's going to be the PR manager, but that's the thing. So we've got 3 members of Anglerfish team who I think are going to be, you know, taking on the student council roles. So, like I say, it'll be interesting to see if that has any impact on the storyline in any way. But, you know, beyond that, I don't have any information, so we'll see. You know, watch this space here. So that's what we know in terms of Death's Finale's overall plot. So to sum it up, my interpretation of the title is that it's a reference to the fact that a few of Girls and Panzer's characters are technically coming towards the end of their high school lives. But at the same time, Death's Finale represents the beginning, potentially, of something new, of a new story arc. So, namely, this is going to be a story arc that's focused on saving a friend rather than the whole school. In that respect, it's giving us a reason to be continually invested emotionally in Ourai's Senshido struggles. So, of course, though, what happens after Death's Finale will be anyone's guess. I imagine that the producers, whilst not necessarily wanting to string the franchise out to a point where it becomes tired, will probably want to keep the door open for any potential future instalments. After all, thing is, whilst of course Ourai Student Council and quite a few characters from the other schools, whilst they might be sort of bowing out in a manner of speaking, the actual protagonists of the show, Anglerfish team, they're still going to be at Ourai Academy for another year yet, so there's still potential for them to get up to some, you know, escapade of some kind. But of course that's a discussion for another day. However, that's not everything we know about Death's Finale so far. So as promised earlier, I'm going to be doing more videos on this instalment, particularly based on what we know from the first part of it, each one covering a particular topic. So here we've looked at the storyline and at the plot, so at what it's most likely to be about. But at some point I also want to look at the new tanks, I want to look at the new characters as well. So let's just say, in reference to tanks and characters, there are certainly some interesting eye-catching ones out there. So keep your eyes peeled in the meantime, because I'll be looking at them in due course in subsequent videos. But other than that, I'm going to wrap this up here. So this was probably a fairly, you know, nice, short, sweet video. Hope you all, of course, enjoyed this little discussion about Girls and Panzer Death's Finale's plot, what we know of it so far. Hope you all found it, you know, quite interesting, as I say. So, as I said, I'm going to wrap up here. So thank you for joining me then, everyone, for this. If you're not aware already, Propagandist is my second channel. My main channel is called General Red Strategist, where I do a lot of gaming content. So if you're into gaming content, you know, watching me play games, or watching people play games rather, in which they commentate over it, then go and check my General Red Strategist channel out. You might enjoy it. There are a couple of social media links that are also associated with that channel, a Facebook page and a Twitter page. Once again, of course, I'll provide links to those. Links to all of these will be in the video description, as always. You can also access my Strategist channel via my Propagandist channel page. There should be a link to it over on the right. But other than that, thank you everybody once again. Once again, I say, hope you all enjoyed this, hope you found it quite interesting to listen to, and hope you're all as enthused for Death's Finale as I am. And of course, hope that you stick around for these future Death's Finale videos, which I'm going to be recording fairly soon. So, other than that, thank you everybody, and this is Propagandist signing off. Goodbye all.